Welcome to this week's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, and you're probably here because you're interested in property investment or money. But if you think about it, underlying that is success. You're probably looking for more success in various elements of your life, and success in life depends upon your ability to influence and to communicate. And that's what today's show is going to be about. So while we're not going to talk about property, I am going to be talking with somebody who is a very successful property investor and business person. I'm going to be having a chat with Mr. Body Language, Allan Pease. Now, body language is a very important part of communication because a lot of communication occurs in a non-verbal way. But Allan Pease has also got a lot of other interesting thoughts about success, especially in the challenging times we've got at the moment. So I know you're going to get a lot out of his chat. And he also has some thoughts on who's going to win the American presidential election based on the candidate's body language. So we're going to have a chat about your reticular activating system and how that part of your mind, your internal GPS, is going to help you achieve your goals or not. We're going to have a talk about how different genders respond differently and handle body language differently. We're going to talk about what you can do in this new era of Zoom meetings to help your career, your personal life, your interaction with people. So this is relevant for you, whether you're a buyer, whether you're a seller, if you're a mum or a dad, or you've got a relationship with somebody. It's going to be important to understand how they communicate and how they read your communications. So welcome to today's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's most trusted property commentator who has once again been voted Australia's leading property investment advisor. That's the fifth time he's won a similar award in the last 7 years.
As I explained in the introduction, the main feature of today's show is my chat with Mr. Body Language, Allan Pease. But in the theme of success, before we have that chat, I'd like to have a talk with you about 7 powerful beliefs of ultra-successful people. You see, at the moment there's so much uncertainty in the world, there's so many negative things happening, that I'd like to share with you how some successful people have become even more successful. Because I think we all need some positivity, and the answer is if other people manage to do this, so can you. Sure, it's true that successful people get that way through a combination of hard work, positivity, and sometimes they even get a little bit of luck along the way. But many successful people, and I've mentored a lot of very successful people and deal with a lot of successful business people, entrepreneurs and investors at Metropole, and also through our Business Accelerator Mastermind program, I've found that many successful people also have powerful beliefs that help guide their journey to the top. The secret is they understand that success is an attitude. It comes from a framework of powerful beliefs and empowering thoughts. So I'd like to share those beliefs with you now because I'd like to see what you can get out of this to help you reach your goals as well. That's because powerful, successful people believe that the systems inform and inspire their actions, and ultimately it's what makes them successful in everything they do. So let's go through some of these beliefs. The first one is that successful people believe in themselves. I found in general a lot of Australians don't have self-confidence, don't have self-respect, and that holds them back. But if you don't believe in your own abilities, if you don't believe in your own potential, how can you expect anyone else to? That's why incredibly successful people have great self-confidence that even when they may not have all the answers, they believe they can work it out. What it comes down to is that they've got faith in themselves and their potential for greatness. Now, that's not vanity. That's very, very different. You see, the ultra-successful know that if you don't believe in yourself, in your abilities, no one else will. The second important belief of ultra-successful people is they believe they're in charge of their life. This is really important. Here's the thing. They believe that life doesn't happen to them, that life is a result of how they respond to the challenges and the opportunities. They believe they're the pilots of their life, not just a passenger going along for a ride. But in these challenging times we've had recently, a lot of people are playing the victim, and it's not their fault, it's the government's fault, it's everybody else's fault. Successful people have this empowering belief that they're responsible for what they make of any given situation. So that's what allows them to take charge of their destiny. In other words, they don't let setbacks set them back. Instead, they use them as learning experiences and they move on. Another powerful belief that successful people have is that there's opportunities everywhere. So while the recent coronavirus issues have created a lot of people to doubt their future, to be stuck in fear and calamity, successful people are looking for opportunities. That's one of the most powerful beliefs they have. They have an abundant mindset. Where many people see obstacles, see scarcity, successful people see stepping stones. They see stepping stones to great opportunities. Successful people are problem solvers. They're not complainers, and that makes a world of difference. As we work through the 7 beliefs that successful people have, the 4th one I'd like to share with you is their belief in doing things that no one else will. Incredibly successful people don't shy away from taking risks. In fact, they try new things even if they seem trivial, even if they seem simple. What it boils down to is they understand that to be different, they must act differently. They must be willing to try things that others won't. But the risks they take, they're calculated risks. So they're not really that risky. They've got a plan B. They know what's going on. They recognise that, in fact, the biggest risk is in themselves. So let me give you an example. If I asked you, is property development risky, you'd probably say yes. If you asked me, is property development risky, I'd say no. But then if you asked me, well, yeah, but Michael, would developing a 10-story, 12-story apartment block be risky? I'd say, yes, it is, because I've never done it before. So risk is very much in the investor rather than in the commodity, whether it's property, shares, whatever. Now, we're going through the beliefs of successful people. And as I was saying, successful people take risks. They also believe that execution is critical. You see, it's no coincidence that successful people execute what works. Time and time again, they take action. They understand that strategy is only as important as the execution. So you get a lot of information from my podcasts and my blogs, but the power's not in the information. The power is in the action you take. And unfortunately, most people don't take action. They don't act on what they know. In this world, you get paid on not what you know, but on what you do with what you know. So the secret to successful people is they develop an idea, they make a plan, they create a strategy, and then they execute it. And they repeat that strategy. If they need to change it, they'll adapt it a bit. Another belief of successful people is they believe in winning through hard work. Yeah, it's not a surprise. Success comes from hard work. I know a lot of people look on the outside and think, oh, it's just luck. No, it's not. Successful people know that work comes first and then payoff comes later. When others quit and compromise their values, successful people keep going. The reason why they become victors in the end is not so much because they're smarter or better connected or more talented. It's because the last person left standing when others fail is the winner. So they just keep going and they work harder. And the last belief of successful people I'd like to share with you today, I'm sure they've got lots, but the last one I'd like to share with you is they believe in giving back. Now, most people don't recognise this, but a lot of charity comes from the wealthy people. I've said it before, giving back is one of the ways successful people show their gratitude for all the opportunities they've been given. Giving back also keeps them grounded, keeps them humble, keeps them in touch with reality. Believing in the power of giving back reminds them they must keep working and playing their part to make the world a better place for everybody. So people often ask me, why do you give away so much information for free? Why do you do all this? And I've been very fortunate. I've come from humble beginnings and I'm now fortunately very successful in business and wealthy in a whole lot of ways. And I believe it's part of my responsibility to help other people up the ladder as well. And that's why I ask you to keep sharing this podcast with other people. Jointly together, we can actually help more people become successful. But this last belief of successful people is a lesson for all of us. If everyone had the habit of sharing the blessings in their lives, we'd all be happier. We'd all be richer for it. Believing that you can be successful is part of the secret to achievement, but believing that you can make a difference in other people's lives is also a valuable lesson for everyone too. So now there's a time for you to believe in yourself. It's a time for you to take action and set yourself up for the opportunities that are going to present themselves as our property markets move on. So if you're wondering what's ahead in these confusing times, why not have a chat with my team at Metropole to help provide you with direction, to help provide you with guidance, to help get you results. In challenging times like we're experiencing, you need an advisor who takes a holistic approach to your wealth creation. That's exactly what you get from my team at Metropole. We've got no properties for sale, but if you're looking to get into property, we've got a number of ways of helping you. We put together strategic property plans so you can plan to become the person you plan to become. Hey, wasn't that one of the beliefs of successful people? We have a buyer's agency, Australia's most trusted buyer's agent, who've been involved in over $3.5 billion worth of property transactions. We can help you too. We have a wealth advisory division run by Ken Race. We've got property management divisions with renovations and development. Why not go to metropole.com.au and start with a strategic chat, metropole.com.au, or call us on 1300 Metropole. I'd love to be part of your wealth creation journey. Today I'm going to have a chat about body language so you can understand what the people you're dealing with are really thinking rather than the words that are coming out of their mouths. And clearly this is going to be useful for you, not only in your career, in business, in real estate negotiation, but in your personal life. So I'm looking forward to my chat with Allan Pease, who's known internationally as Mr. Body Language. Now, Allan appears regularly in the media around the world, and he's sought after for advice on personal image from everyone from business executives to prime ministers to TV presenters to royalties and rock stars. Now, together with his wife, Barbara, Allan's one of the world's most successful non-fiction authors. He's written 18 books, and he's probably sold well over 30 million books. Welcome, Allan.
I love just to hear that introduction. I can't wait to hear what I've got to say, Michael.
Now you've got something to live up to, haven't you? But I remember learning about body language from you on TV probably 30 years ago, probably even 40 years ago. And I learned from you that the words you say count for less than 10% of how communication is interpreted, and the rest is non-verbal. So, Allan, tell us a bit about body language and how you learned about it.
Well, you're right. I mean, I started with television with the Mike Walsh show in Australia going back to 1977. So that's like 43 years ago. And nothing's changed in terms of how body language works. In fact, nothing's probably changed for maybe 100,000 years, because body language is simply gestures, movements, expressions that are linked to emotion. So whatever emotion you're feeling is likely to be revealed in a gesture, expression, position that you're going to take. So the art of reading body language is reading a person's emotional condition through their gestures, which allows you, when you piece this together in the circumstance under which it's happening, allows you to work out what could be going through their head. And the interesting thing that most people are generally not aware of, body language used to be 100% of our communication before we learned to speak, which is only a recent event. It makes up still 60 to 80% of all the impact we're making face to face. So if you don't get it right face to face, you're going to find it difficult to get it right with anything you say.
So what you're saying is the words only make up a really small amount. It's your intonation and how you say things, and also how your body is responding. So don't believe exactly what's coming out of people's mouths. Would that be right?
No, absolutely. In fact, if you look at the percentages, 60 to 80% of the impact of what we're saying face to face is the way we look, appear, and behave. You've got things we can write on paper. We call them words. You can write them down. They account for between 7 to 10% of the impact. So it's only very small. And the rest is intonation. So provided you look right, present right, sound right, you can put on a good show, a good impression. And look at politicians. A lot of them have learned how to do this. They get up and they look terrific, and we love them and we vote for them. But we probably can't even remember what really they had to say, what their policies were. But we like the way they looked.
So they say don't judge a book by its cover, but you do, don't you? So you've really only got a short period of time right at the beginning to make a good impression, don't you, Alan?
Well, people form up to 90% of their impression, Michael, in under 4 minutes. So when you meet somebody for the first time, we decide pretty quickly. In fact, it's less than 10 seconds, but within 4 minutes, we're pretty much solid on what we think we're dealing with. We make up to 90% of their impression. We decide very much whether we're going to give them the nod or give them the no to whatever they say. And that's based largely on how they appear. And the first 4 minutes is critical because you're using a different part of the brain in first impression than you are in second, third, and 10th impressions. The limbic system, which is the ancient part of the brain back here, that is activated when you're meeting a brand new person. And what it's doing, it's evaluating that person for aggression or friendliness. Now, will they hurt me or will they be my friend? And once you've established that, and that normally happens in under 4 minutes, when you meet the person the second, third, fourth, 10th time, you're using the front part of the brain to recall who they were. And so that's why you always remember the first time you met someone, Mike, but you don't remember the 9th, the 46th, or the 87th time. You don't remember any of that, but you always remember the first time. So the old saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression is absolutely scientifically true.
I think another matter today is that you've got to build trust quickly. People don't buy things off people they don't trust. It's a different world today, isn't it?
Well, it's getting harder to establish trust now because so many purchases and what we do is online where we don't actually see a human being. Now, the bottom line of the way it's been pretty much forever with human beings and starting to change now is that if people buy you, there's a good chance they'll buy what goes with you, which is trust in effect. If they feel comfortable with you, they feel like you're not threatening, you're not intimidating, that they can trust you. They might even ask you to come home to their place for dinner. If they feel like that and they buy you, there's a good chance they'll buy what goes with you. But the reverse is also true. If they don't buy you, there's something about the way you look, appear, or behave that they don't feel good with. They're likely to say no, even if it's a good idea, because they just don't feel. It sounds like a great idea, Michael, but my gut tells me not to go ahead. Normally, what they're saying is that the body language that they were seeing was contradicting what they were hearing.
So, as I said in the introduction, this is going to be useful for people listening to this in all areas of their life, in their careers, whether they're selling, whether they're buying, whether they're trying to convince their kids or their loved one as well. But, Alan, at the moment we're locked down in Melbourne, where I am. You're a bit freer, but the world has changed. We're selling on Zoom now. We're selling online. What body language tricks can you teach us for people who are now needing to negotiate in this new environment and the new world?
Yeah, it's the first time in history this has ever happened, and there's been no real training available for people to say, what do you do? I'll give you some really great tips that work absolutely a treat online like we are now. Now, the first thing is that when you're online like this, you can do a few things, body language-wise, that you cannot do face-to-face. So, for example, you can stare at someone. You can analyze their face while they're talking.
This is an audio-only podcast, Alan, but people don't know that you and I are actually still able to see each other with the wonders of technology. Right. So you're talking in many ways about Zoom, which is, I guess, what we're wanting to talk about, that it's Zoom, Skype, FaceTime. So the challenge, of course, is people aren't even communicating face-to-face anymore, are they? They're using WhatsApp and Twitter and things like that where you can't even see people.
Well, we've had this whole period where SMS type texting has taken over most of our lives in one way or the other, both personally and business wise. It's starting to go now the other way, where calls like you and I are doing now, which is we can see each other face to face. That's starting to happen, and there's no training on how to do that. But there are things that you can do if you're on a live call face to face right now that you and I are doing that you can't do in real life. So, for example, in real life, you can't stare at someone. In Australia, in non-threatening social conditions, we meet somebody's gaze around 2/3 of the time. We look away for 2/3. So we look at them the first time at their right eye, then we move to their left eye, then we look away. The reason we go from their right eye to the left, that's the way we read. So where if you go into Arab countries, they're going to do it backwards. So we can stare at someone, and that means that you need to be aware of what your face looks like. If you're a man and you're going to shave, for example, make sure that you've got it exactly right, because if there's a hair out there, everyone's going to see it, especially women, and they'll start staring at it. That's the first thing. Second thing you can do that works really well on a Zoom call, as in a face-to-face, if we like what we see and what we hear, we like the people we're with, we lean into people and things that we like, and we lean away from people and things we don't like. Now, the problem with a Zoom call, you and I right now, you're in Melbourne, I'm on the Sunshine Coast. If we were face to face, we would actually be sitting about 3 meters apart based on the size of our bodies on the screens. Now, 3 meters apart is where you keep people you just don't like. In fact, if somebody's standing 3 meters away, there's something about them we just don't feel like we're connected with that person, because Aussies, we stand around a metre in capital cities and a metre and a half in regional country centres when we talk face to face. So what you can do on a Zoom call is make a point of, when you're talking with somebody, that you lean into the screen. So as I'm leaning in now you feel more like I'm face to face with you. So therefore I'm having a more positive impact. Also, if I want to listen to you, I'll lean back as you talk. I'll lean forward when I talk. I'll lean back when you talk, lean forward. That means when I lean back, you've got to start coming up with something. You feel this urge to speak. If I want you to stop speaking, because maybe I don't like what you're saying, I'll lean forward and you start saying to yourself, oh, I've got to come to a conclusion on this. So you can control the length of the conversation by moving in and out on the screen. But the important thing here is to avoid that situation where you look like you're 2 or 3 meters away from that person, because that's where we keep people that we're not that interested in.
Now, Allan, some people would say, hey, I want to be natural. I don't want to be fake. Is this all manipulation, Allan?
Yes. When you think about it, some of the worst advice you can give people, Michael, is just be yourself. That is the worst advice you can give somebody.
I agree.
They'll never get a job. They'll never get a date. They'll never get a deal. The way you look face to face, the way you behave, the gestures and body language you've got, we've learnt that from our society, from our parents, from our schools, from our environment. Most of it, some of it is genetic and inborn, such as arm crossing appeared, and smiling are certainly inborn gestures. But most of them we learn culturally or environmentally. And that doesn't mean that they're serving you well, because you might have picked up, and many of us do, habits, gestures and behaviours that really turn people off and cheese them off. And we don't know that that's what we've got. So in that case, just to be yourself and be natural can be detrimental in a lot of cases. So what you need to do is to ideally get a camera and film yourself, or get someone to film you interacting with people. Make a little home training course to see what you look like in terms of how you're behaving, because most of us don't know what we look like. And then about a week or so later, play it back with a few friends with the sound off and just say to them, what do you think's going on here? What do you think I'm feeling? And you'll be sometimes shocked where you thought you were coming across friendly and you look like a cranky old coot. So make of yourself in a face-to-face situation and eliminate gestures that are negative. That's what the study of body language is about. Eliminating things that are detrimental to getting communication with people, and add in things that are going to be positive, because that's exactly the process by which we all became the way we are with gesture. We added them in because we saw them, but it doesn't mean that they're good for us. So we eliminate things that aren't good, such as holding hands with yourself in front of your zip, crossing your arms on your chest, maybe habitually touching your face as you're talking, which turns people right off without them even knowing why they're being turned off, and add in things that are positive. So within about 30 days of this, you can eliminate stuff that's no good, put in stuff, and you become the new natural, the new you, which is the better you. Because as I said, some of the worst advice you can give a lot of people is be yourself.
Sure. So it's not manipulative if the intent is right. And the intent is to communicate better with people and to build their trust. Now, I remember reading a number of your books many years ago, and one of the ones that still sticks in my mind, and we've got it on our bookshelf here, is Why Men Lie and Women Can't Read Roadmaps. You taught me that different genders communicate differently. So, Allan, are men or women better at reading nonverbal signs?
Well, it's probably the most politically correct time in history to even discuss that. And when you discuss that, you will definitely, if you're a man, which I am, and you'll be definitely called sexist, whatever you say, if you tackle the debate. But our books, there are 3 books in that series, Why Men Don't Listen, Women Can't Read Maps. The new brain scans that show how the brain operates when you're thinking certain thoughts or doing certain things. And what they show very clearly is that men and women are different. Now, not better, not worse. We're different. We function in different ways. We process information in different ways. Now, many well-intentioned, often well-intentioned groups get this confused. They confuse equality with difference. Now, equality is a political concept. That is for the same background, education, skill, ability. We can choose anything we want to do, regardless of who we are, where we come from, what sex we are. That's equality. And that's a legal concept. We study difference. Difference is a science question. Do we function the same way? And the answer is no, we don't. And anybody who's had any experience with the opposite sex will know we just don't. We do not function the same way as the opposite sex. They're called the opposite sex because they're opposite. Now, that doesn't mean,
That's right.
it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It means that if one person's speaking French and you're speaking English, there's no point speaking English to that person or speaking French to the other person. They speak a different language. You get a phrase book and you learn how they speak, what they think, what they eat. And it's the same with the opposite sex. If you don't do that, you will have a life of hell. Now, the politically correct life is a really thrown a cat amongst the pigeon with many people with relationships. There are many single people who should not be single because they're expecting the other person to get them, to understand them, and to think like them. And it's not possible. We don't. We think differently. And we want them to think differently. I mean, when I wake up in the morning, I don't want to look at me, listen to me. I wake up and look at Barbara and listen to her, and it's a challenge often, and it's interesting, and it's exciting, and it's different. But I understand the difference. So I manage her within the fact that and she manages me really well. And as a result, we don't argue about what most couples argue about. We just don't do that. In business, where we are together, we've never argued at all because we manage each other. Now, what happens is the differences are what attracts men and women to each other. That's what attracts us. It's the same differences that sent us to the divorce court. And back in the old days, you remember they used to call it irreconcilable differences. What we're saying is they're concilable.
Yes.
If you know how the opposite sex works and you manage them with it, they become interesting, exciting, fun to deal with, and you can sell, convince, persuade, and manage them.
Well, I guess some people are going to now go and look for those books, and they're available. We'll put a link on the show notes for this anyway, because you've got a great depth of books in your library, and I saw you can get them online. Now, at the moment, people are a bit confused with what's going on in the world. We've got a recession in Australia. We've got a pandemic that's messed up a lot of people's lives. We've got a bit of political and social unrest. So there's people thinking, what am I now going to do? Some people are not going to go back to their jobs. Other people are going to close down their businesses. That's a tragedy. But out of every adversity come opportunities. And I know that you've got a message for people who are wondering what they should move on with their life at the moment.
Well, yes. I mean, what a pandemic does and a global financial crisis, what we've been through, and 9/11 had similar effects. And you and I at our age have been through at least 6 of these major things.
Mm.
Important thing to understand with any big change, whether it's pandemic or otherwise, we get through it. We always get through these things, and there's a new normal as it was. But what these pandemics do and what the financial crisis do is it throws our existing version of normal out the window. We have to change. And people say, we can't wait till it goes back to normal. Well, it won't. It won't go back to normal. It'll go back to a new normal. And a lot of people, as you said, are thinking, well, what will I do with my life? Did you know that 74% of people in Australia, in a Gallup poll, don't like what they're doing for a living? They get up on a Monday morning, they go, hell, here I go again. And they go to a place that they don't really want to be, doing stuff that they don't really want to do, usually thinking to themselves, I'm waiting for a break to come. And the break doesn't come. That's the point. So what we're going to be talking about with this seminar is based on a book that Barbara and I wrote a year ago, which was a bestseller. It was my favourite book, in fact, called The Answer. There's a part of the brain that sits just at the top of the brainstem at the back of your neck. It's about the size of a golf ball. It's full of neural endings and nerves. And what it does, it's the command center of the brain. So everything that you experience during the day goes into the command center. Everything except smell goes into the command center and gets distributed. Now, the bottom line is this. What most people don't do, and why they're in that 7 out of 10 people who don't like what they're doing, they think about something they'd like to do with their life. The first point they start, and it's part of our cultural upbringing, is how would I do that, Michael? How would I get the money? How would I get the opportunity? How would I get the skill? They start with how. And what I'm going to say now will dramatically affect the people listening to this. And if they do this, their life will change right now. From today, you do not think about how you will do something. How will I get out of this? How will I get a new job? How will I do whatever? How will I get a new partner? How will I whatever? Think about what. Think about what you will do. Now, how do you decide the what? Here's how you do it. This is really simple, but it's not easy. What is the one thing or things, and some of us have 2 or 3 of these, but what is the one thing that you love so much to do? You have in your past, you love it so much that you couldn't wait to get up tomorrow morning to do it, and you're really disappointed when the day is over because you've got to go to bed. In fact, you love it so much, you'd do it for nothing. If you can identify that, that is where your life should be going. It doesn't mean you quit your job today and start doing it, because you've got to plan over time with these things. So what is it you'd like to do? And decide the what, not the how. If you start with how would I do it, that's where you come to a complete end and nothing happens and you remain one of the 70%. Decide what, and it's scary because you're deciding what you're going to do. I'm going to become, have, or be, whatever it may be. That's it. End of story. Full stop. Over and out. That's what I'm going to do. But people say, but how, Michael? How will you do this? And your answer is, I don't know. But this is what I will do. This is what I will become. Now, the minute you do this, your brain starts immediately searching, just like a Google search, for information in the environment. Because in a given day, there are 4 million bits of information your brain can deal with. It can only deal with 20,000 max before you pass out. And so if you put in the what, your brain will search within the 20,000 what you want. And that's why if you bought a car, and a friend of mine this morning just bought a new car, it's a white Toyota with 4 doors. And he decided to buy it 6 weeks ago. He said to me, when I decided to buy the car, I couldn't believe how many white Toyotas are driving. Every second driver's in a white Toyota. Now, there's no more white Toyotas. And before he decided, all that happened is he put that into this part of the brain, the command center, and it searched the environment and all it would see is white Toyotas. So if you decide the what, you will see the how.
That's your reticular activating system kicking in, and that's the filter that filters out all that extraneous stuff, all those other bits of information you don't need, but it's so powerful. It's your internal GPS. It's the Google search engine in your mind, isn't it? So if you're looking for it, it's going to, if you ask to look for something, it'll find it out there. But if you don't know what you want, Alan, it's very hard for your reticular activating system to give you the right information.
Look, you're absolutely right, Michael, because only 7% of Australians have ever heard of the reticular activating system. We call it the RAS for short. But it's the GPS that takes you to places, keeps you on track. Now, the big issue is you've got to decide the what. What is the thing that'll drive you out of bed tomorrow morning that you'd love to do so much that should be your career? And some of the answers we get from our seminars, Michael, are interesting. We had one woman said, well, look, I love hosting dinner parties and with people around. I'm really good at it. And she is, because I've been there. She puts on great parties. She said, how could that be my future? That's how Martha Stewart started. She loved to do stuff at home and she decided for the rest of my life, I'll do this. Yeah, but I like to talk all the time, someone said. I'm a big talker. Well, so was Oprah Winfrey. She would not shut up. Now she's one of the richest women on the planet. So whatever it is that you love to do so much, and most people don't think about this. They don't think that their hobbies or their passions can become their life's journey. And yes, the answer is it can. If you're waking up every day saying, I can't wait to go and do whatever it is you want to do, then you'll never work another day in your whole life. And you put it into the reticular activating system, that's the what, and it will show you the white Toyota with 4 doors on every street corner.
But I think most people are worried. They're worried about failure. They're worried about looking silly. They're worried about it not being successful. But it's not meant to be easy. We've gotten to the stage of our lives where we are because we've got the resilience. We've made lots of mistakes. Things haven't always worked out, but we've actually learned from it, haven't we?
Well, that's right. And the thing about failure too is that people say, oh, goals are scary. Look, if something's not scary, if it doesn't scare you, not to the point of that you immobilize, but if you don't look at it with awe and feel a bit nervous about it, then what's the point of doing it? Because if it was easy to do and you could do it, you'd find it pretty damn boring and you'd get over it. So your goals need to be big enough that they put a base level of fear into you that, oh, wow, this is really great. This is scary. If they don't scare you, they're not worth it.
So what advice would you give to people? Now, you're having a seminar coming up real soon, the Passion to Profit live stream, and there's going to be a link in the show notes. So profitlivestream.com, that's on Friday the 9th of October. But what advice are you going to be giving people? Why should people give up their precious time to have a listen to you?
Well, I'm going to talk about 2 things. First is how the brain works, how the reticular activating system works. And most people, once they hear about this, they finally get it, and explains why in their life they've been getting the results they've been getting, good or bad, from everything. So we're going to go through the science of how the brain works. The second part will be, how do you work out what it is that will get you out of bed tomorrow morning you can't wait to get up and do? Because only about half the people have an idea what that might be. The other half don't really know how to work it out. But it's a process. There's a process of working it out. And the simple place to start is what will drive you out of bed that you can't wait to do. That's where greatness lies for every one of us, if we can identify that. So we're working on a list of how do you get that out of your head. And once you've got it down, you then write it down, stick it in the RAS, then you go on automatic and you see the answers of how to do it. Otherwise, you'll remain the 7 out of 10 that gets up every Monday morning and says, oh, here we go again. And Sunday night, they get a knot in their stomach because they go, Monday morning's coming.
Now, people may think, well, this is a bad time. Australia's having a difficult time, the recession, job cuts. But you and I have been around long enough to know that out of every downturn have come great businesses, Netflix, Disney. There's a whole list of people who have actually taken advantage of the opportunities, not of people, but there are always a change of guard at these times, aren't there? And today, I think it's easier than ever to start a new business.
Well, with the internet, it's given us access to so much stuff. The hardest part today is deciding what you might want to do. In the past, before the internet, we had less options. So it was, in fact, easier. If you've only got 3 options, well, that's easier. If you've now got 23 options, it's very difficult to work that out. But you're right. The upside of that is we have more options now to do more things than we ever did, because we're all now individually connected to billions of people. And when you look at some people who, particularly internet businesses, and I know many, and so do you, that are running businesses that seem really quite small, not that interesting, but they have a great big turnover because they're tapped into tens of millions of people. So it is the greatest opportunity we've ever had in all time. But you've got to decide to seize that opportunity, and not think about where we've come from in the past and what's happened with COVID. It's easy for all of us to dwell on that, and depression is one of the big side effects of this now for people. They're getting depressed. Everything they ever knew is stopped. And with depression, the simple way to deal with that, and I'm an expert on it because I've had it many times. It turns out I'm a depressive type. Most really successful people turn out to be depressive. Is make a decision if you're suffering any depression, to put a time limit on it. And so if I fall in a hole, which I do from time to time, Barbara, my wife, says to me, mate, you're in a hole, put a time limit on it. So I mightn't have even thought I was in a hole, because you don't know when you get depressed. You don't realise,
do you?
You don't know you're there. No, and it's happened to me many times in my life, and many 3 or 4 major ones. So if I'm in the hole, she says, put a deadline on it. So I'll say, okay, and I can think of one instance right now where back in the mid-90s, we lost everything. 25 years of bodies. We were incredibly wealthy people. We had boats on the water, and we had houses in Sydney, and we had houses in England. We flew around the world. It all went. We lost the whole lot through making a pretty bad judgment of financial advice by accountants. And we both came from housing commission, so the fact we went back to zero, in fact, further past zero, wasn't that big a deal, because we knew it was like to start with nothing. And I got seriously depressed during that. And Barbara said to me, she said, look, put a time limit on this. So I decided on a Tuesday that Friday next week at 4 o'clock, I would become an undepressed person. I needed at least 10 days just so I can really pour it into people who needed it before I became undepressed. And on the Friday next week at 4 o'clock, I just said, okay, I'm back. And we decided that we would only think about what we could do. See, part of depression is thinking about what you haven't got, what you've lost, or what you can't do. And that's what I'd been doing that, and I was a master at doing that. We'd lost everything we'd ever owned, everything you ever saw on TV, and all that body language and tens of millions of dollars. We lost the whole lot. In many ways, it was a good thing, because, as you mentioned before, we had the opportunity to start with a clean slate. But in a depressed situation, you don't have a clean slate, because depression is looking at the past and ruining the past. So we decided that day that I would only think about what we could do. I would never, ever discuss again what happened. And for 12 years, we never mentioned it again. And from that next 10 years, we had the biggest time in the history of our business.
I think there's a couple of great lessons in there, including the fact that every successful business person I know has had failures, and don't judge your chapter 10 to somebody else's chapter 30. You also on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter now, you see their highlight reels. It looks so good there. You don't see all the bits on the cutting room floor, do you, Alan? So don't judge what other people look like. You don't know what's going on behind it.
You know, a funny story about that. When I was, I've been a salesman all my life, since the time I came from Housing Commission in Broadmeadows in Melbourne. And I've always knocked on doors. My father was a life insurance salesman. He said, if you knock on doors and you're good at it, son, you can have a good living. If you become a doctor, you'll have an even better living. I said, well, how can I do both? That's got to be double the benefit. And I became a salesman. And by the time I got to be 17 years of age, I was the top pots and pans salesman in the country. I sold more pots and pans than anybody in living history, and it was terrific. And I remember I went to a seminar, and they were talking to me. They wanted me to give a speech about how do you sell. I said, well, look, for every 5 people I call on the phone to make an appointment to go and see about the pots and pans, when I turn up, one's not there. Of the 4 that I see, 1 won't let me get started. 3 will listen, but only 1 says yes. Now, the question is, what's the most important number? People say, well, it's got to be the 1 person that said yes to you, the positive. Because we all focus on the positive. We only want to know about the 1. But if you think about it, for every 5 people I spoke with, I only finished up with 1 sale. That means 80% of everything I did amounted to nothing. 80%, and in all new ventures and with all successful people, that's what you find. That a large percentage of what they did do amounted to nothing. It was a failure, but nobody wants to know about that. We only want to hear about the goals that they kick. So it can create the illusion that highly successful people only kick goals all the time, but they don't. They might be better at kicking goals as time goes on than at the start. But I mean, failure is an important part, because if you call 5 people, only get 1 sale, the sooner you get rid of the first 4 out of the way, you'll get to the 1. If you understand that concept, you don't go looking for the 1, you go looking for the 5. And then put the 5 into your machine, out pops the 1. Most people look for the 1, that is the goal someone kicked, and they think that goal kickers like me and like you, they think we just kick goals every day. And as you know, that's not the case. We do a lot of kicking, but we don't always get a goal. And sometimes it goes over the boundary, hits someone on the head.
So I guess the message there is an integral part of success is failure, and don't be scared of it. Be prepared for it. Now, I'd like to finish off with something that I know you've got some thoughts on who's going to win the American presidential election based on the candidate's body language. What are your views on that, Allan?
Well, look, if it was body language only, in fact, I just finished watching the first presidential debate. If you watch that with the sound off, and that's what I do, to get an objective approach to body language, you watch it the first time with the sound off, so you don't have any prejudices or bias that you might have yourself. And just watch how they're behaving. With the sound off, Donald Trump was the winner. He came across as authoritative, assertive, in charge and in control. And Joe came across as a really nice, quiet guy that I love to take my grandkids to the park and give them an ice cream. And Trump had come across as tough and aggressive, which in fact he is in real life. He's a body language bully in many effects, and he brought that from his commercial time into the presidency. In the first year, it didn't go very well. It rubbed people the wrong way, so he had to get consultants to change how he presented. But in that first debate, he was Donald Trump. He was authoritative. He was forceful. Whether he's telling the truth, who knows? We don't know. But he was forceful and aggressive, and Joe Biden was soft and defensive. So based on, if you didn't know who those people were, based on the way they looked with the sound off and then with the sound only, you listen back to the radio version, Donald Trump definitely had it, because he looked like he was in charge. And the reason that's important, if you're living in a time, which Americans are, and we are too here in Australia, where you've got bullies who are bullying you, who are giving you bad trade deals, you've got strife and riots all over the place and people who are walking around with guns, you want someone who's a bully. You want a bully. Oh, I want a bully to protect me. I don't want a nice guy to be out there when my life and my family are threatened. So right back to basic survival on Maslow's pyramid. If that remains the way it is, and these 2 guys remain the way they are, I predict when it comes to the vote, people will vote for their longevity, which is the bully who's going to stand up and protect them. That's my tip.
Okay, well, this isn't a political discussion. It'll be interesting to see. Based on body language, then Trump is a body language bully and Biden is a body language wimp.
Yeah, pretty much.
So much more to get from you. I'd love to have a chat again, and I'm going to look forward to, I'll be there online, Passion to Profit Summit live stream. It's in Australia, Eastern Standard Time on Friday, the 9th of October. But best to go to profitlivestream.com, and it's a free registration. There'll be a link in the show notes. It'll be fascinating to hear your thoughts about what we should be doing. Thank you so much for your time, Allan.
Great spending time with you, Mike.
Well, I told you today's episode of my podcast would be a bit different, and it was. But I enjoyed my chat with Allan Pease, and if you got some benefit from it, why don't you tell somebody about it by using the share button on your podcast app or leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to this. And if I read your review out, as I'm about to for Annie Blackshaw, I'd love to give you one of my books as a way of saying thank you. And Annie left a 5-star review saying, a gem for Australian investors. Michael shares his personal and business wisdom on the podcast. He and his guests offer very rational insights from a wealth of business and investment experience. Tuning in regularly keeps me motivated. Thanks for producing such an incredible and free resource. Well, thank you, Annie, and I hope you got benefit from Allan Pease today, which again was a little bit different, but some great insights into the way we communicate. I'll be back twice a week with the Michael Yardney podcast. In between, you can catch me on social media or my regular property update newsletter. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?